There we are.
All right. Good morning, Sean.
Very happy Friday morning to you, my friend. Wonderful as always to see you on Facebook Friday. I look at that calendar, and you and I both know I try to do what I can to make everything I can, but it's always a priority to be here with you because there's so much wonderful things to connect with and people and guests and time. And it's just nice to see my friend and see her smile because COVID kind of sucks. Being
I know.
apart, not a lot of fun.
I know. I think we're so done. We're so done with this isolation. I mean, and this last round, I think this has been worse harder than ever because of, I know you've already been through it, but for us, I mean, we're the 2/3 that haven't been affected by it yet. So we're trying to kind of insulate from all of that until we get back.
Yeah, well, until you get vaccines and then the rollout and all the mishigosh with that. I mean, the good part is I am seeing people like my mom. Actually, she's actually getting hers right now at the forum. I know my my wife's mother's significant other. He just got it, I think, yesterday, which was fabulous. And I know that my dad is working on his second one next week. So it's there, and it's going to vulnerable parts of the population, and it'll be wonderful when it goes to all the parts of the population. And hopefully by then the virus is in check and off to the races. We get to reopen and renew, which I think we're all just primed for.
No kidding. Want to get out of life back. Well, this show is brought to you by Heyler Realty. We are excited for how robust the market has been. No matter how quarantined we've been, the real estate market is still very robust. It's considered an essential business, and we're able to safely provide tours, show property, able to be outdoors and help people understand what their options are. But we are very, very lacking our single family homes for sale in the area. So if you are even thinking about any kind of transition, feel free to just, give us a call. We're, again, no frills, no pressure, just a conversation to kind of figure out what the options are, because we know plenty of various different options you can explore.
Jay, you bring up such a really good point, and that is speaking to the fact that there is a great tension because of the lack of inventory. And I think there's the idea that I subscribe to, that we do, which is the bird in the hand versus the two in the bush. We know that this moment has an unusual confluence of circumstances, which our guest is going to be able to really speak to today, based on his experience and resources, because he has amongst the very best resources in that industry. But we know the cost of money is obscenely cheap. We know that people are like us, we expressed in the very beginning, ready for change, ready to get outside, ready to move and stretch, and they're looking for it. So we know that the inventory in particular, kind of in the Westwood, Rancho, Cheviot neighborhood, Mar Vista, and at a certain price point, it is laser hot. Like, people will buy mediocre things and pay a premium for them. And so it is exciting. We're very fortunate with that. And we have other things that are happening. I should probably illuminate anything that is near what's happening down in Culver City, downtown Culver City. I mean, that is lava hot because of all of the presence of Apple and Netflix going down there, and Amazon down there, and the new buildings. And you probably should have just had a sleeping bed over at the other property down there that we have for the market, because I lost count how many times you've shown it.
Well, the platform you can literally see from the outside of this complex, and so you see the future kind of rising and being built right in front of your eyes. To be 2 blocks from the train station at Jefferson and La Cienega, you can get downtown to the coast. When the world is where it was a year ago, when we get back to that place, it's going to be this whole, holy smokes, I missed that opportunity kind of a thing. And I think the people that are out there and looking at properties and paying attention to real estate are the ones that are going to benefit when we're on the other side of this. And, they're the ones that are a year ahead of where, the whole influx of population is going to be. So a lot of transition occurring, and that's the key word right now, is transition. So with That being said, we're going to bring in our guest, Matt Hebard from US Bank. He has been the huge helper of transition because he has been instrumental in helping us pre-approve and qualify and get our buyers who are ready into the homes, because you can't get into one if you don't have all cash. You need to get a loan. So good morning, Matt. Thanks for joining us.
Hi guys, how are you? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday,
great.
Matt. Thank you.
Well, you know, I was introduced to Matt by a CPA that of our mutual clients, and I was helping the buyers, and they had gone down a different direction in the loan, and their CPA brought Matt in because they're both self-employed. And when you're self-employed, it is a very invasive process to get financing, to say the least. It's kind of like pee in a cup, get a DNA sample, what's your blood type? I mean, you know, just tell us your whole entire life story. And even then, we don't trust you. And so Matt came in this was even pre, you know, pandemic, where the lending's gotten even more intense with all of, you know, this last year in terms of self-employed. And he was able to swoop in and be the hero. And he got the job done. And I've been a fan ever since, because, you know, to be let down by a lender when everything else makes sense, it's really frustrating when we're on the buyer side, knowing that these people qualify. They've been through the process, and the other banks just couldn't get it done, whereas Matt was able to get it done. He's a no-nonsense loan officer with old school, kind of the way you and I kind of were trained in the business, Sean. Matt's that same kind of logical and also helpful and guiding in terms of helping people through the process. So
Well,
Matt,
if I can,
just want to highlight that.
I do. I want to actually give you a compliment, Matt, because in all fairness, if you can pass the scrutiny test with Jay Wu, you are gold. That is just it. You're pure and you're gold. That is a very discerning, very demanding advocate for her clients. And she's pretty ferocious in all fairness. She does not mess around, and she gets right to the point. And you have exceeded her expectations time and time again. And so I want to just compliment you. It speaks to your acumen and your resources and where you position yourself. And we're thrilled to be able to introduce you to the audience and start to illuminate and highlight some of the knowledge that you have and some advice that you have for people going forward. So thanks for being here.
It's been a pleasure to work
Yeah,
with
why
you.
don't you share with us a little history of how you got in the business and how long you've been in and how you got to US Bank?
Sure. So stumbled was more like it, how I stumbled into the business about 20 years ago. My background was actually as a financial consultant, as a portfolio manager for a number of years, and found that I loved doing that. Although the downside was not like we're seeing now, but when I got in, I believe I started in 2000 for our first tech bubble. And my conversations had to start with, "I'm sorry, sir, your money just went down 10% for today." My recommendation actually brought you there. So two conversations to have at an early age in my tenure of in a professional career. So shortly thereafter, I decided that using my knowledge and analytical skills that I picked up throughout the years, real estate and real estate lending was more my forte. So I've been doing this just going on 20 years as of this year, and have been just happy with clients, with business, with the outlook, with everything ever since. So
congrats. Yeah. And then you transitioned to a more, because you used to be at like a mortgage brokerage type situation and before converting to a bank, which it's hard these days to be a independent mortgage brokerage firm out there, right? It is a little bit easier at a bank.
Well, yeah, you know, so each have their pros and cons. My first 10 years in the business, I had my own company and had a number of loan officers reporting to me. And, you know, it was a different time back then. There's a lot more scrutiny now. As you were mentioning, COVID has brought a lot of issues to the table with additional conditions, additional scrutiny, especially with borrowers that you have to be knowledgeable about. And, you know, brokers definitely serve a purpose. They also have a lot of programs in the alternative lending front that a lot of the big banks don't mess with.
True.
People are clients and ones who fit inside the box, nothing compares with having a big box bank program on your side. So.
That's true. That's true. Very well said.
Matt, I think that's interesting too, because you have a unique perspective of qualifying, you know, your qualifications, having been a financial person and working in that industry, understanding high finance, understanding the cost of money, understanding yields and returns and trends with the bonds and stocks, et cetera. And that you really had to find resources that you could depend on, because you've already been through that transition, like you said, the bubble, where it's like, I thought I could depend on it, and then it was gone. And then that wears on you, right? We wear that stress because we care and we're invested time and effort and heart and soul with people. And so it says a lot about the institution you're with now. How did you come about that relationship with US Bank?
Good question. So I've been with US Bank for about 3 years. US Bank kind of details their profile as, at least in my opinion, working with the fifth largest commercial bank in the US, but still having a more community type of approach. The reason why I say that is because I've worked at other big box institutions as well. But with US Bank, it's very easy for me to approach the underwriters directly, the processors directly, get management involved when something needs to be addressed on a more thorough basis. And that's one of the reasons why I really enjoy being here. Not to mention having 31 pages of different types of loan programs that a lot of
Wow, that's a lot to know.
allows me to have a bigger repertoire so that I can talk to a bigger client and get the niche product that they may need to fall into in order to get the best deals.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, is that consumers can't know what they need access to, but only us as a true consultant and being able to guide them through based upon what I know about you and understanding your tax returns and the type of employment you have, and et cetera, et cetera. These are your very next best steps. And it's really difficult, especially not to be like downing on the youngins, but the new people in the business just don't have the past experience to know what they don't know. They don't know a lot. And to be preemptive about what needs to be explained, expressed, and communication with the underwriting team and the processing team is huge, as well as explaining to the borrower why things are happening the way they are, because it's stressful. It is stressful. There's a knot that starts in their stomach the moment they get an accepted offer, and that knot in the tummy does not unravel until the loan actually funds. And having gone through it a couple of times myself personally, I'm in the business and I still go through that. Ooh, is it going to happen? And what's happening? And, and I know what's about to happen, but that knot and that anxiety and that nervousness kind of sits in the pit of the stomach until finally it all comes together. So it is very meaningful to have a good team, good communicator, but someone who can actually get into the surgery and be like, okay, underwriter, let's be reasonable and logical. This is what's happening. This is why it's this way. And so I think that makes a huge impact on whether things go smoothly or not, right?
Yeah, and the hardest part is always to remember for ourselves that we have to relate to the concerns of the person sitting on the other side of the table. That's who is the most important person in this whole equation. And so I try, and I know you guys do as well, when you do a great job of it, to break it down to its most common denominator to make sure that people understand about all of the, everything that goes into both the loan process, the real estate process, the escrow process, the title process, because most people just don't quite understand how it all works, nor should they. They have their own jobs that they need to excel in.
That's fair.
Like that,
I know. I always used to tell a client, like, look, if you put me, because you'd have doctors and lawyers and really bright people, and they're like, I know I'm a smart person, but why is it that real estate has its own little world? And I said, look, it's the same thing. If you plot me down at your desk or your surgery table, I couldn't possibly be a specialist and know how to do your job either. So it's the same thing. We have a specialty niche of knowledge and experience, and it's the experience that provides for the safety and the care that they're protected with the knowledge that we have, and not having to live through the mistakes through their own personal experience. They can live, they don't have to, and have a smooth transaction based upon all of the preemptive things that we do. Sean and I always like to equate it to, if everything, wow, this is so stressless and easy, it's because like the duck on water. On top, it looks like it's gliding across the lake, but underneath, we're paddling like hell to make sure we cross that lake. And so every day in our industry, what the consumer may never see is the amount of paddling that we have to do underneath the line to make sure that they see on top the smoothness and the glide that happens to make this kind of a celebratory experience,
I 100% agree. Yeah, and it takes a teamwork effort. No one person is going to be able to manage all aspects of the real estate purchase process. So having a good team behind you is definitely the best way to ensure an efficient transaction.
Matt,
Yeah, I know.
let me ask you a question about kind of the nature of things. Jay and I are dinosaurs, have been in this industry a long, long time. Combined, I dare say it's closing in on 60 years at this point.
Yep,
Was
it
reflecting how
is.
long I've been in it, and it is so lots and lots of experience. And one thing that we do know is that there was an era when lending was really irresponsible, and it was like, yeah, I got a pulse, and you can make an X. Okay, here's your loan, and we'll go. At that time, I think we were doing God, 80/20s to like 1.1 stated, like you didn't even, I mean, just had a credit score and you could go. And even then they used, so that was an irresponsible thing. And we all experienced that bubble. We all experienced that crash because it was not predicated on any sound principle. And then we had a swing back with the Dodd-Frank Act, which was 22,000 pages of rules and
Yeah.
regulations. And it was so restrictive. Do you see that there is kind of an evolving common sense approach to lending, or is it really just by the book? Because you said you have a tremendous amount of portfolio and products to sell. I'm assuming that's because there's some logic and adaptation to changing conditions.
Yeah, I mean, conditions do evolve, and they evolve with the economy, they evolve with politics, they evolve with geopolitical things and everything in between. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So in the early days of the 2000s, literally you'd write your name on your loan document and you get $1 million
Right.
handed your way with nothing down and barely a job. And, so times were definitely different. And then, of course, it pulled back tremendously to bail ourselves out of what we got ourselves into, frankly. And I think as of now, lenders and banks in general have become more astute to what they really need to see in order to make them feel comfortable. Obviously, most banks work off of Fannie and Freddie guidelines, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines, and they use that as a catalyst of how they want to do their portfolio lending, which are usually for loans that go above the normal loan threshold of what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac allows for that particular county. But yeah, I mean, I would say all in all, COVID did take us back and have a lot of the banks reflect with regards to what they want to see, especially when it comes to self-employed people, because unfortunately, a lot of businesses have been and are still impacted with the effects of COVID at this point.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Of course.
it's a little harder to gauge the economic forecast of a small business versus a salaried employee who gets a base pay, who knows how much they're making every month based on their employer. So
I know the banks are fighting over the doctors and the medical directors right now. I tell you, because we're helping doctors close on a single family, and banks are just fighting over who's going to give them the lowest rate to give them the loan. Because you talk about 20 years ago in 2000, I remember still buying my first townhouse for a 2-year fixed rate at 7.99. And I put 5% down at the time because I just turned 30 years old. And now I'm dating myself. And the 15% part was 12.99 on a 5-year fixed. And so if you think about rates now are under 3%, if you had told me 20 years ago, and I thought when I refinanced that, down to 5% a year later, and then down to 4% the year after that, and these were not even 30-year fixed. Those were 2-year fixed, 3-year fixed at the time, knowing that I was not going to stay in this place for 30 years. I would have told you there's no way rates are going to be where it is right now. It's just blowing my mind.
Yeah. So
are you seeing, I'm sure you're busy as all heck with refinances.
Refinances were a huge part of my business. Yeah. As they are to all banks at this point. Right. So, I mean, if a borrower can better their interest rate and hence their overall financial picture by paying less in interest, I mean, rightfully so. We have seen just this past year, in the past 3 weeks, we've been, in 21, the 10-year note has risen above 1%, which, I mean, wow, above 1%, I mean, my goodness. But to be honest, if you equate it on a percentage basis, it's probably moved up about 25% since the beginning of the year on a percentage. So, everyone is asking to pull out that crystal ball and see what it says about predictions in 21, where rates are going to be, where policies are going to be. I always tell people after doing this, 20 years, that I can only control the now. So if you want to try and wait to see if the rate comes down 1/8 to 1/4%, that is your right to do. But if you can save money now and take advantage of it, there should be no reason not to enjoy the benefits of it.
Isn't it Warren Buffett that said, if you want to try to time the bottom or time the top, you're never going to do it, because right when you think it's hit, about to hit bottom, that's when it's going to bounce up, and vice versa. And that goes true for stock purchases. It goes true for real estate buying or selling. It goes true for timing the rate lock. You've just got to be okay with, I got as close as I could. But what is it Sean loves to say? Pigs get greedy, hogs get slaughtered. Is that the statement? Is that the way it goes? I forget, something like that.
Ironically, I would butcher it right now because I haven't said it in quite a while. But yes, it is something along those lines of, greedy pigs become hogs and hogs get slaughtered. And,
yes, something like that. Yes.
Yeah, and there's I always like to use this one as measure the weight of fire. We all live with it. We all know the importance of fire, but you got to measure it. That's like measuring time. It's really hard to do accurately in one sense, and you have to, with these things, because they're so fluid and dynamic and changing, and have so many external influences on them, whether it be global politics, which come into play, and a sense of stability, or energy costs, or what have you. It can cause a lot of fluctuation in the marketplace. And I suppose it translates most importantly, Matt, for us, because you're the conduit, you are the link in the chain that is able to bring some person and or entity the real property, right? And real property is a proposition that says, hey, this space on earth is yours, and you are able to be safe in it and grow in it and develop it and make it all the other things that you can do with it. But there is a way to get here, and that you're the path. It's very rare that people can do it without your resources, and it's really important to understand how it's best suits you to be prepared for that. In this day and age, you're finding that the documentation and the thoroughness of each lender is, as Jay was mentioning, very invasive. Do you see changes with that ever taking place, or do you think we're going to be in that kind of position for a long time?
Again, playing devil's advocate, if I'm the one sitting and lending the money, I want to get as much information about the person I'm lending as possible. Whether I think things like that will be changing or not, I don't know. Unfortunately, we're still going through this pandemic right now, and we're still having a hard time with, like I said, small businesses, people being unemployed. So at this point, I don't see any changes I don't anticipate any changes being made for the loosening of restrictions. I used to teach courses on real estate lending, and I used to call ourselves part of the CIA, because the CIA stands for 3 different documentation, which are of most importance to being pre-approved for both a refinance and a purchase. C is for credit, I is for income, and A is for assets. So we sometimes invasive as being a member of the CIA, but necessarily so, because if you're borrowing 6 or 7 figure accounts, the person who you're borrowing from, or the entity, wants to know that you're a stable person who can make payments, and all of that good stuff.
Matt, you brought up
that
something
leads
wonderful.
to
Go ahead.
Right. Go ahead, Sean.
No, girl, you go.
Well, that leads right to the next question, which is, how do folks get ready, especially as we're ramping up into the height of the purchasing season, even though I don't think we can even say height anymore. It's been hot and heavy all year long. Is how can folks get ready when they're wanting to go house hunting and get pre-approved, and what is the process for that for folks?
Good question. So I can only imagine you, just like every other professional real estate agent who's been doing this for a while, most probably don't even show clients houses unless they have a pre-approval behind them, because you use everyone, all parties, including the listing agent that you'll eventually have to work with, to know that your client is properly vetted and can qualify for the loan. So pre-approvals now more than ever before have become a necessity. With regards to getting pre-approved, I mean, the short of it is, as I said before, the lender needs to review your credit stream, which is in the form of a credit report, your income stream, and depending on if you're self-employed or employed, will have to do with things like tax returns and W-2s and and pay stubs and the like. And then last but not least, your assets, or where you're getting the money to put your down payment down. And that may also include some reserve requirements that the lender might have to help understand that, goodness forbid, something happens in a negative way, that you have money to make timely payments until you get back on your feet, essentially. So.
Well, negative way means something totally different now. Who would have braced for a year of pandemic.
Oh, no, no way to know that. Matt, you mentioned in the CIA, and I'd love it if you could speak to this. Uh, the credit is really basically your resume for your trustworthiness, if you will, right? And um, do you have some suggestions, recommendations as people start to prepare to look for financing, a way that they can help maximize and or quote unquote game their credit score to really take advantage of it and get it to the right place? Do you have some ideas along those lines?
Sure. So in a general term, there are some self-reporting agencies like Experian allows you to do it. Equifax, the major bureaus allow you to do self-generated report. Now, what they show you is usually not the report that lenders will use, because lenders have to run what's called a standard pull or a standard credit pull, where the credit score may vary, by double digits with regards to what the individual pulls versus what the bank will be using. But it might give you a good guideline to run a report on your own, take a look, see if there's anything derogatory or something that you may want to work on, i.e. collections or judgments or even late payments. A lot of us don't even know that if we made a payment one day late, that creditor might have dinged our credit. Or even if we made the payment and the creditor just didn't get it or made a clerical error that needs to be fixed in order for them to rehabilitate the credit score before they get pre-approved. So
The common one that we used to see were student loans. People think they're deferred, but then all of a sudden it's a rolling 90-day late, 60-day late on their credit. And then the utilities, collections, and so forth. Fortunately, obviously, this is 25 years ago when all of these things used to show up a lot. Now with technology and obviously computer age, because you figure in 95, we're just entering into computers and emails. So that's how long it's been. But now, we have technology and digital billing and so forth. So something can't really sneak up on you as much. But still, there could be, a roommate situation from college. You didn't know you had a utility bill, and there's $200 collection. All of a sudden, you're like, why is my credit score 650? Well, because this was a ghost that's been in your closet you didn't realize. And so people should be advised to check their credit, right, as often as possible, so they can keep an eye on if there's something that needs to get cleaned out. And that takes time, can take time.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in 2021, there are different, I think most credit cards usually allow you to have like a credit monitoring system that's attached to it. So if anything, both positive and derogatory may come about on your credit, they'll alert you so you can take a look and see if it's something you can fix, if it's something you can mitigate, things like that. Those are always helpful.
It used to be, Matt, that there was a relationship between your available line of credit and how much you actually drew on it. That actually had an impact in credit score too, right? Is that does still stand true today?
The general guideline, and again, credit is like rocket science, essentially. It's like you think that this was a magic number or formula, and it turns out because of something else, it didn't happen exactly the way that you wanted it. But the general consensus is usually to keep your maximum lines of credit under a 25 to 30% balance, in which case that usually helps bolster credit or keep it at a certain level. So.
Yeah, I always equate it to like you want to have the line, but never use it. And because everything is based on percentages, as well as a credit report is only a snapshot on the day that it's run. If you had a $10,000 credit limit and you ended up putting a big trip on, which nobody has lately, but a big trip on that credit card, but then let's say you pay off the following month, let's say it was $5,000, and then all of a sudden the following month you have zero. I mean, your credit score is going to be worse on the month where you had that charge versus the month later when you paid it all off, kind of a thing. So to be cognizant and aware that it's just purely a snapshot, you really want to look as ideal as possible. You got to have a rolling month of keeping balances low and maybe not using the card or get the points on your credit card as much as using maybe a debit or a Venmo or some other kind of form of payment on certain purchases during the times of leading up to home purchasing. And they check that the morning of funding too, right? So that's the thing that most buyers are not aware of. Don't go crazy just because you've got the loan doc signed. You still have to stay clean until everything's all cleared, until the money's in the bank.
Yeah, in a lot of situations they do. So I always tell our borrowers that, keep your credit in an even keel, keep it exactly as you started to where you want to finish until your loan is actually completed and funded. it's a very good point to bring up. So,
It's a game. All of it is a game. And that's what I try to advise our buyers too. It's like, look, you've got to know how to play the credit game. And we know you're good people. You wouldn't have the jobs that you do. You wouldn't be buying the homes that you have. But in the meantime, you don't want to have a misstep in the board game right now, and all of a sudden go, get the and go to jail card. You want to stay, getting onto Park Place and all of that, and the game of buying the home, and you got to play your cards right in order to not get the wrong draw on something. And it really comes down to knowledge is power. As you know better, you do better. And I think everyday folks are never, ever told these things until it's upon them and they're looking to buy a home, right? I mean, it's not things that kids are learning in schools. It's not anything that most parents know how to teach their children unless they're financially in that world. And even then, they're not able to properly know unless you've gone through it firsthand what it is. And so I think that leads us to our next question is, how do you know that you have somebody who's advocating for you, that is making sure that you know what's about to happen down the pipe, and actually being preventative, if you know in advance not to do it, then you'd have to clean up the mess later.
Correct. Yeah. You
right?
want to start cleaning and clean. Yeah. And it's always tough to backtrack and clean up once you're already moving forward with things. I mean, trusted lenders are just like trusted real estate agents, or just like trusted CPAs and financial advisors. I mean, the truth remains is that the home purchase is probably going to be the biggest purchase you're going to make in your life, So I would always—
And the largest debt they incur.
And there you go. And the flip side of that, largest debt they incur, right? So, when picking someone to work with, usually, I mean, I can tell you most of the clients that Tammy and I get, Tammy's my assistant, and we usually get from referral sources like yourselves and CPAs and financial institutions, and people who have clients that they are concerned about, and they want to make sure that they are giving them a warm handshake to someone who they trust and who knows will not pull the wool over their eyes, if you will. Because with numbers, there's a lot of things that can be manipulated, and things that are not spoken of up front, and things that may not be double checked. And so you got to make sure that the person you're working with is trusted, and you got to make sure you trust them as well, because during the 30 or 45 or 60-day process, these people are going to be working hand in hand with you. They're going to be keeping you up at night. They're going to be giving you high fives in the morning. They're going to be your best friend, your worst enemy, your everything in between, until you get to the promised land where you get keys in your hand. So make sure that you're comfortable with who you're working with.
That's true.
So Matt, if you, in an ideal scenario, what I'm hearing you say is, listen, get your ducks in a row. It's going to serve you better, right? So if you want to be prepared with documentation, you want to consult with somebody. Do you mind speaking a little different, or sharing what the difference is between a pre-qualification versus an actual pre-approval?
Sure.
Some people might benefit from that.
Yeah, good question. And again, there are different variations of who deems what as a official pre-qualification versus pre-approval. The way that we usually work it is, if I get on a phone call with a person and I go through the CIA aspect, their credit, their income, their assets, they're telling me how much they make, they're telling me how much they have at the bank, they're telling me what their credit score looks like, they're telling me how much they want to put down and what loan amount they're looking to get qualified for. Essentially, that's a pre-qualification call. However, that only goes so far, because unfortunately, with the information that is given on the phone call, the facts need to be checked. And a lot of times, and not to the borrower's demise or anything like that, especially self-employed people, they may know how much they make, but unfortunately, how much they make is not necessarily the qualifying income that a lender can use when working up the ratios to find out what they're qualified for. So pre-qualification is more of a verbal setting where you get a warm and fuzzy about what you're anticipating to look at. And then the pre-approval, the official pre-approval, is really when you get the documentation in, you put the file in the system, you have their credit report, you have their financial documentations, you have their asset information, and you can say, look, with all confidence, I feel that based on all this information, you are fully pre-approved to move forward and purchase this property. So.
Yeah.
Well, it's like shopping with a bundle of cash, right? Bag of gold. And when you're pre-approved, you know you can perform, and that's one of the main elements of success in a real estate transaction, or actually securing a property, which both Jay and I have a very high capture rate with those. And that's because we line people up with our trusted resources like you, Matt, and say, hey, come to the party with it all ready to go. And you're going to look like, and you are actually, for all intents and purposes, cash to the seller, because you've got a pre-approval. Like the seller said, the banker's saying, yeah, Matt's saying, I've seen their assets, I've verified them, I verified their income, their credit, their ratios, we're good to go. It's actually, Mr. Seller, it's on your property. That's where the weight's going to be, right? Appraisals and things of that nature.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's great to kick off the year this way and helping people understand their finances, how to get ready, because it's going to be another pretty competitive year for buyers when it comes to trying to get into a home. I know we have a couple right now we're working with together. Just every weekend, we're really trying to find that right fit for them and to get them the home before their lease is up, and get them situated so they can raise their family there. So lots of good things, and thanks to your help and all you do to communicate, and you're very accessible, text, email. It's just really helped, because unfortunately or fortunately, we're all accessible all hours of the day and night, and there isn't any clocking in and clocking out. We're just, we're on call all the time, right?
That's true. It was my pleasure.
Well, have
guys.
a great one, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
See you
Appreciate
soon.
it.
Thanks for joining us.
All right, my pleasure. You guys have a great day.
Thanks, buddy.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, what a week though, huh? What a week. Historical, amazing. I mean, seriously, it has just been such an uplifting week. I have to say, I don't know if you got to watch any of the performances from the inauguration that Tom Hanks hosted on Wednesday night with the CNN. To just listen to John Legend and Katy Perry, and there's the Demi Lovato, and all these uplifting songs of hope and let the sun shine in. Let's get this party going. Let's get back to partying, let's get back to just having some unity and soul connectedness and positivity, and just pulling together and coming out the other side. Because fortunately for me, I have you. Our life is enhanced because we have each other to bounce board off of, and I never have to fall back that far before you're catching me, and vice versa. And I really wish for our country right now that we can be in that place where we lift each other up versus push each other down, and there's more of the focus on how can we help our fellow humans, versus beating them up. And I'm really hopeful. I'm really hopeful that the messages, because the fish stinks from the head down, as they say, and it's been stinking pretty bad. And so hopefully now we can have, if anything, unity, positivity, strength in numbers to just pull together and be better, be the world leaders that we used to be.
That is a very heady subject, and there's a lot of content and a lot of reasoning behind that. I think probably for me, as you know, I look at every day as hope. I look at every day anew. I think because it's only this moment, right? And I can't look back. And I, in all fairness, I don't have a ton of faith in my governance. I really don't. I feel there's a lot of misinformation and confusion, and a lot of direction that we as people cannot control as the individual. But I do think this: it is everybody's civil right, and I think civil responsibility, to treat every single person with dignity, with respect, with understanding, with open-mindedness and open-heartedness and tolerance and acceptance. And I think that's what we're really trying to do. If you want unity, it's going to require moving into uncomfortable spaces and seeing things from a different lens, and seeing that there are multiple perspectives on how things work. And I do think that the change in administration, and I do think that beckons to a direction that is certainly more congruent with the majority of the population of people, and with a very peaceable exterior, right? So we're really going to see
Mhm.
what the content is, and the content is incredibly important. I think there's a lot of growing pain. I think there's going to be a lot of change again, because we headed in a lot of different directions over time. Uh, and you hope that unity is a real theme. But I will tell you that my experience with unity starts with each one of us individually, wherever we are, present in the moment. That's all we can do for unity. I can't theoretically have unity 3,000 miles away. I can have some identification with that and relate to it, but I certainly can relate to the person walking down the street, and or the person that I'm my neighbor, or the people that we meet, we care about. And so much of what you do, Jay, and that I do is connect with people profoundly. We get a sense of who and what we are because we expose ourselves, we open up our hearts, we open up our minds, and we communicate honestly and directly with people. And it's in that exchange of energy, which is really a bond of trust. Like, I can be vulnerable with you and I can show you the weaknesses of my character, or my strengths, and share those. And that's what I think we need to do as a society. I think the real proposition is much, much greater than even just the American governance. That's almost symbolic for what the real issue is. It's humanitarian.
Mhm.
It is time to move out of all your comforts and move to a place where, if you see someone and I'm going to refer to them as my brother and sister, I do not see color, I do not see age, I do not see gender. I mean, I said brother and sister just because that's an old adage and I'm an old dog and I use that, and I'll have to identify and learn that better. But going forward, it's this idea of just, I see you. That's the idea. Can I see you? And can I treat you with respect? I mean, we talk about masking and what the masking represents. Whether you're afraid of a mask, or want to wear a mask, or don't want to wear a mask, I think there's this whole idea of, I do it because it's a common courtesy more than anything else, whether I thought it worked or not. What what harm does it cause? I mean, let's start with that. Two, how about I can be selfless? How about I can do something that is not about me? I'm comfortable. I'm cool in the gang. Like, I mean, look, I live in a beautiful part of the world with all the resources that are amazing, have depths and friends and relationships, and a fantastic industry where we have a lot of fun and our time is well spent. Because here's the thing about real estate too, it's, I think, really important to understand. There is a huge intimacy in real estate transactions for the people on the buy and buy. Oh, we have the investor, which is cold and calculating, and that's just money. But mostly our ability to connect with our buyers and sellers is to say, look, you have an asset or you want an asset, it's extremely expensive. Even the cheapest thing is extremely expensive. And you need somebody to navigate the complexities of California real estate law and do it well and make sure that you're protected and that your interests are. I just got off the phone prior to this with a client, and she goes, the moisture underneath that house is bothering me. And she goes, and I'm really not clear about how well bolted the house is. And I was like, Story, here you go. You call Rick Story, you get him underneath that house, and you will know the story. And you're absolutely right. I needed to listen to what you were concerned with, even though I have read the report and I'm not very concerned. But that little intuition that's happening there, no, I put your interest before mine. And she goes, well, I'd like to get there at 12 noon tomorrow. And I go, okay, I got to shuffle some things. But guess what? I'm going to do that for you because the bond is, I'm putting you first. And so I'm
Right.
hoping that the message of unity going forward in the new administration and all the new society is designed that every individual takes up that mantle, moves himself out of their own personal comfort, treats one another with love and respect and kindness and tolerance, and says, look, I may agree or I may disagree with you. That's not going to be what's going to keep between us. We're going to work towards common solutions to what ails all of our society. That's what my hope and takeaway from the whole thing really is.
No, and it's
If you,
true. I have to tell you, though, the one part of and I know it's words, and I know it's a speech, and I know it's a speech writer, but I have to tell you, I had tears well up when he said, my soul is into this. And it was just like, oh, my soul is into this. And I think it resonates with me because that's how we live every day. Our heart and soul is into protecting people. Our heart and soul is into making sure that our clients profit and benefit the best that they can. Our heart and soul is into sharing everything that we've experienced and learned is carried on and passed on to the next person we help every single time. And you're right, almost 6 years combined of being in the real estate and mortgage industry, and being in this business and multi-facets of it, our heart and soul, I think, is in it more than ever before. And what I am so grateful for is that I found my calling. I know you found yours too. And to know that we're in this heart and soul because this is who we are. We are in the right place, on the right seat, in the right vehicle to be where we are, to make that impact in the world. And even if it's the vehicle of having this opportunity to be and doing our life's work, which is to impact people in a positive, meaningful way through education, through sharing the knowledge, to sharing how much we care, all of those things kind of tie into our heart and soul is in it. And so
Absolutely.
I'm hopeful.
Well, I mean, we see it, we do see it in our own day to day, right? There's definitely a sense of calm. There's definitely a sense of life and more vibrancy. Now we hope that the economy can really, the small businesses, of course, are really on the edge. And they are on the crust of the dry bread. I mean, they're barely hanging, and hopefully they will, because they add so much great character. And I'll say this
Well, last
too.
night I saw that another business that went under, the Borderline Bar and Grill up in Thousand Oaks, and that tragedy that happened there back in 2018, and the fact that they're going to close permanently because they cannot, living through this pandemic and after the mass shooting that happened there and everything else, and it's become just a memorial site. It's so sad, but again, Standard
Hotel closed last night, so, and will not open.
I did not hear that.
Yeah, Standard Hotel. So there were, and of the industries that have been most impacted by COVID, you would really think that it's hospitality. So it's going to be hotels and restaurants. Those are the places that are, and of course movie theaters, because nobody's in a closed room with anybody that close anymore. Yeah, so it is definitely. Oh, the other one that died, Ticketmaster. Ticketmaster is on the cusp of not surviving, which they were acquired by another company. I forget their name, but the point being that who's selling tickets to what venue? Like, there's no venue, so you're not going to in-person venues so much. I mean, if you want to sell tickets, you should sell tickets to get either the mega lotto and or a vaccine, because that seems to be where you want to have tickets and some good fortune. But yeah, so there are those things that we have to be sensitive to. And my hope and your hope is, and you and I have been through these cycles. This is what's exciting for us. This is actually our competitive advantage, because we've always adapted and pivoted, and we see kind of what's happening. We've been very fortunate to be able to prognosticate before it happens, and adapt and move forward and change in our behaviors and our patterns. I was thinking about it when Matt was talking about pre-approval and people coming to homes, and that we don't have as many looky-loos type of things. And I go, you know what? The one thing I can say that's a silver lining out of COVID are the protocols of hygiene for like germaphobes like me, and the idea that the people coming to see the home have already gone through a vetting process, because who's going to go through all the hoops to get an appointment with the disclosures and the protocols and the timing and the separation. So I think it's actually siphoned out a lot of the waste in our business and is making a healthier, better business. And to be frank with you, other than I like meeting people in open houses, and that's kind of been a fun vehicle, this new system actually for me is more suitable. There's an efficiency in it, as long as we can get enough on all the right people through a property. So I don't know. I keep thinking, again, it's to that message of hope. It's to that whole idea of unification. It's this idea of, okay, unifying is creativity. It's going to be expression and connection and adaptation. And that's where we're at. And I think our industry and our location where we do what we do is so primed for it. And I know you and I are going to enjoy some fantastic changes in the immediate future. So I'm excited.
Evolution, right? Evolution happens because of change and agitation, change, how we shift, etc. And then the evolution of another chapter, another, change is inevitable, right? Change is constant, as they say. And we're dealing with constant change, new rules, new guidelines, new paperwork, new people, new processes, all the time. How quickly can we adapt? How quickly can we shift and change? And the great thing about having the total opposite of you and me is that you cerebrally, me physically being able to put into motion what you think about. It's kind of like the yin and the yang, but you know, whatever you can't do technically, I can pick up that part, and you really have the wheels in your mind that thinks at such a high level that helps us to shift and see things. So I think the both just always, I mean, this year, we're at the end of this in October, it's going to be 16 years we've been together. It's just insane.
You know what?
How much in a blink.
In a blink, I would not have said 16. If you had asked me, I would say, because it doesn't seem like that time is flying by, because we do have fun. We have the most fun when we connect, when we're together and we're able to do things, because we're both foodies and we like the same kind of food. So we have high food compatibility. But we also have the core integrity, and we both have the work ethic. And, you know, because it's like, listen, we're in this together. Let's go do this. And we attack things. And I often tell people, I feel like I'm able to surf on this great wave of energy because of your energy, and your commitment to getting things done is massive. And that my job, to a degree, is really navigating the complexities that come before us, and in kind of a game theory, and apply them, and then using the principles through your continued education process and the massive amount of networking that you do, and or personal development and growth and team building and coaching. And you get these tools, and you get, I mean, you come back from all those things with like 100 new tools. And then we got to siphon out and say, okay, which are the 2 or 3 tools we can effectively use, and then build from there, right? And so, I often use that image of Iron Man in a super suit, right? So there's Iron Man, who's like the fleshy, kind of soft, vulnerable. Like, you put me in with technology, and I'm just going to start to cry. Like, I sat here and fought our copier for three hours the other day, getting it back with Wi-Fi and with the computers at 3 hours. And I was like almost in a fetal position, like, you know, but I persevered. I figured the damn thing out, and I got it to where I needed it to go. But I was like, if Jay Wu were here, it'd have been done. She'd been pissed, but it'd been done.
So insane. Well, we do have some really cool things coming up this year. I know we have the West Side Safety Fair coming up March 7th. I know they're going to do it virtually. We'll put the link up on our site so that the community can have some access to some really cool things that are still going on. There are volunteers that are working hard to ensure we have the graduation for our 8th graders from middle school, or culmination, as they call it, culmination from 8th grade from middle school. The fact that our seniors this year, 2021, to have maybe learn from the graduating class of 2020 and try to, you know, take it up a notch and help those folks. But the safety fair is coming up March 7th. I know that is going to be a virtual process. And, you know, we had that 3.5 up in Willowbrook the other morning, and Wednesday morning at 8:30, I'm sitting here on a Zoom, and I felt a little, I was like, oh, there goes a little mini earthquake. And so it's never a matter of if, it's just when. And with the fluctuation from 85 degrees to 55 degrees, and being a scientific person myself, I'm like, the molecules like expanding and contracting like that so quickly over a 12-hour period, it's not good news. So it kind of freaks me out a little bit. So the safety fair is a key thing. I know you're working very hard on the West LA Homeless 501(c) organization to raise funds to get that off the ground, to just improve the community.
We just actually got our official tax status approved by the IRS. So that's fabulous. We've taken in a number of donations, which is going to go directly for dealing with the unhoused. And, you know, my philosophy has always been, if you can house them, then you can quantify the issues and the population. And there will be people that choose to not live within those structures. And then you can handle it differently, civically. You know, people ask me all the time, well, where are my civil rights compared to these people that are unhoused and their civil rights? And they impact where I live and what I do. And I can appreciate that. That's a very complex question. And I think what I have come to believe is that if we can give everybody a decent, safe place to be and treat them with some dignity, then we can start to peel away the layers of the onion, so to speak, and understand how we can solve this problem within each person and giving them shelter. And then those people that choose to live outside of the rules and regulations of society and civilization, then you can have different answers for that, right? But you have to exhaust the humanitarian effort, in my opinion. And that's, as I mentioned earlier, my frustration with governance, because I see a great inefficiency in the bureaucracy. I see
Of
too many
course.
layers, too many people who won't take responsibility, but I'm excited for that. So that's the website is WLAH.org, WLAH.org. And I think we'll probably try to get someone, a spokesperson or two on the show to talk about that sometime soon, because that is the big issue on the west side of Los Angeles, that's for sure.
Well, we do have a pretty cool lineup of folks, whether it's event planning in this day and age of COVID, landscape architect, we have a therapist, we have lots of great guests lined up for the next couple months, actually, of folks that are going to be coming on the show, try to educate, empower, improve quality of life for our viewers, one show at a time. And so with every week, the hour flies by as it does. I know our PICO committee is having a meeting next week and know that we're going to be shuttered again for another year, because any public venue that is in-person crowds are not going to be welcome probably until 2022. So sadly, 2 years in a row of that event. But I think what this does for us, like everything, is how do we evolve? How do we connect and improve? And how can we still create engagement, edutainment, as we like to call it, entertainment, education, and try to provide and have some good PSAs and try to promote, the businesses that are in our community, create connectedness. How can we continue to do so? And so we're going to have that conversation with our committee meeting starting next week and see if we can come up with something creative. We welcome suggestions, but I know that all of that is another year. At the start of the year is a whole another sequence of calendaring of all the meetings we got going on, right, Sean? It's like the never-ending blocks of meetings of Zooms now, of course, but blocks of meetings to tend to.
Listen, that's a wonderful adaptation. Probably keeps us safer in a lot of ways, keeps us off the road, keeps us from extra hurrying, because you can just connect to your online and get it done. But I also think that's a great thing to keep us all connected, right? So participation, and I feel very fortunate. Yeah, it's like my father taught me many years ago. The problem is not when the phone rings, it's when the phone doesn't ring. And fortunately, you and I both have phones that are ringing. They're actually, like, literally when I take off these headsets, I have to like wash my ears every hour, because I'm like, it's so hot in here. But it helps me be efficient, because I can multitask with all the things that are going on. And it's very exciting times for our business, that's for sure.
Well, next week we're heading into the last week of January. It boggles my mind, but there's lots to do this weekend, and great to see you again, Bud. I'm looking forward to next Friday, and stay safe out there.
All right, girl.
Good. Get vaccinated.